Hey all, this is going to be your next video for Monday on the color of water, so just follow along with me. Oh, I'm going to set my little timer too just to make sure we don't go over our time amount for the day, just because I want to keep you focused and I know you have your other classes as well, okay? So hopefully by now you've watched the introductory video for what we're doing for the week. And now we're going to talk about Chapter 9 of The Color of Water, and then we're going to get into Chapter 10 together, okay? Okay, so I'm going to throw that up there for you. All right. So I'm going to read to you a little bit. I don't know why that came up there. Can you guys see this? Maybe not. I don't know. But I've got a little, I don't know if you can see this, but if not, ignore it. All right, so I've got some notes from Chapter 9, and then we'll go into Chapter 10 together, okay? Obviously, that's Mommy or Ruth. So Chapter 9 is shul, which is the Jewish word for school. And, of course, she's still in Suffolk at this point, Suffolk, Virginia. And in Chapter 9, it starts out with her father, Tate, who is the local rabbi. He gives Hebrew lessons, does other Jewish things, circumcises children, kills cows in a kosher way. And at this point, Ruth fears her father still for obvious reasons from her past, but watching her father do these things like butchering the cows and other things, just it's hard for her to have a relationship with him. It grosses her out about eating meat. So she struggles with the Jewish traditions in that regard. So in Suffolk, there's 3 schools, one for African Americans, one for white people, and one for the Jewish community. And so her father, Tate, pays for private lessons in sewing and record keeping, and legally Ruth has to go to the white school and not the Jewish school, so she goes there. This is where we start to see some discrimination against Ruth. The kids tease her for being Jewish. This is when she decides to change her name from Rachel to Ruth, which is a less Jewish sounding name. And she also gets some criticism from the Jewish community because her father still sells items from his store to Black people. And this is where he takes advantage of them and sells the same items that he would to a white person for much more cost. At this point in Ruth's story, she is in 4th grade. And she becomes friends with Frances, who you'll see their friendship develop over the next couple chapters. Frances isn't Jewish, but she loves Ruth anyway. Of course, her father would disapprove of that relationship because she's a non-Jew, Frances. And regardless, she doesn't care what her father thinks. She continues to have a relationship and a friendship with Frances and appreciates her, and they take care of one another. And then just so you know, like the community where Ruth is living, most of the families are poor. Frances's family is poor. And then there's a quote in Chapter 9 that I think is really powerful. And she says, "I never starved for food till I got married." This is on page 83, if you want to look. It's one of the last quotes of the chapter. "I never starved for food till I got married, but I was starving in another way. I was starving for love and affection, and I didn't get none of that." Okay? So I want you to think about where this will take Ruth. Will she get affection or love from boys? Will she reach out in other ways because she's not getting it in a healthy way from her father, and her mother's so busy taking care of the house and also has the disability? where is she going to turn to for that love and affection? Some other things in the chapter really quickly here. There's a lot of anti-Semitic references in here, which means anti-Jew. So we get to see, I want to talk about some themes from chapter 9. We see race and racism, and we see it in other chapters from James' point of view, his perspective, through the racism that he experiences, but his mom, as a white woman, is also experiencing it in anti-Semitic ways. There's this real sense of theme with belonging to a community or having otherness, finding friendship, which Ruth is struggling with. Obviously, religion is a theme in this chapter. Family. I'm trying to see if I'm forgetting anything else. But I want you to think about those big ideas: race and racism, otherness and belonging, family and religion, and how those are big ideas in this chapter. Okay. All right, we're going to go to chapter 10, which is school. And I love that how we go from Ruth's perspective of school to now James's perspective of school. So I'm going to take the camera, and I'd like you to get out your annotation bookmark. Hopefully you have that. Okay, and I gotta fix the camera here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Oh, there we go. We're gonna focus. All right, and we're gonna go through chapter 10 together. It's kind of hard to hold the camera and a pen at the same time, but I will point to some things that I want you to annotate, okay? All right, follow along with me here. School. Back in the 1960s, when she had money, which was hardly ever, Mommy would take us down to Delancey Street on Manhattan's Lower East Side to shop for school clothes. You have to go where the deals are, she said. They won't come to you. Where are the deals, we asked. The Jews have the deals. I thought Jews were something that was in the Bible. I'd heard about them in Sunday school, through Jesus and such. I told Ma I didn't know they were still around. Oh, they're around, she said. She had a funny look on her face. The Hasidic Jewish merchants in their black yarmulkes would stare in shock as Mommy walked in. You guys see that okay? Trailed by 5 or 6 of us. When they recovered enough to make money, she would drive them to the wall, haggling them to death, laughing into Yiddish when the going got tough. I know what's happening here. I know what's happening, she snapped when the merchants laughed into Yiddish amongst themselves during negotiations over a pair of shoes. She angrily whipped off some gibberish, and the merchants gawked even more. We were awed. The first time it happened, we asked, Ma, how'd you learn to talk like that? Mind your own business, she said. Never ask questions or your mind will end up like a rock. Some of these Jews can't stand you. And we can make an inference there, folks, about her children are biracial. So obviously there's racism there with the Jewish community when they see this white Jewish woman walking in with her biracial children, right? Looking back, I realized that I never felt any kinetic relationship to Jews. You might want to star that. That's important in his quest for identity, right? We were insulated from their world and any other world but our own. Yet there was a part of me that recognized Jews as slightly different from other white folks, partly through information gleaned from Mommy, who consciously and unconsciously sought many things about Jewish, and partly through my elder siblings. My sister Rosetta's college education at the all-black Howard University was completely paid for. Tuition, books, even school clothes by the Joseph L. Fisher Foundation, which was run out of the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue of Manhattan. In addition, my oldest brother, Dennis, the guru of wisdom and source of much of our worldly news in the 1960s, came home. Sorry, I lost my spot there. From college with respect for Jewish friends he'd met. They support the civil rights movement, he reported. Mommy was for anything involving the improvement of our education and condition, and while she would be quick to point out that some Jews can't stand you, she also, in her crazy, contradictory way, communicated the same sense to us, that as if we were lucky enough to come across the right Jew in our travels, A teacher, a cop, a merchant. He would be kinder than other white folks. She never spoke about Jewish people as white. She spoke about them as Jews, which made them somehow different. It was a feeling every single one of us took into adulthood, that Jews were different from white people somehow. You should underline that. I think that's important in identity. You know what I'm going to do too? I'm going to try and make this, oh, hey, there we go, a little bit bigger for you. I think that's the biggest I can get there. Okay. Later, as an adult, when I heard folks talk of the love-hate relationship between blacks and Jews, I understood it to the bone, not because of any outside sociological study, but because of my own experience with Jewish teachers and classmates. Some who were truly kind, genuine, and sensitive, others who could not hide their distaste for my black face. People I'd met during my own contacts with the Jewish world, which Mommy tacitly arranged by forcing every one of us to go predominantly to Jewish public schools. It was in her sense of education more than any other that Mommy conveyed her Jewishness to us. She admired the way Jewish parents raised their children to be scholastic standouts, insulating them from a potentially harmful and dangerous public school system by clustering together within certain communities, to attend certain schools to be taught by certain teachers who were enforced discipline, encouraged learning, and she followed their lead. During the school year, she gave us careful instructions to bring home every single paper that the teachers handed out at school, especially in January, and failure to follow these instructions resulted in severe beatings. When we dutifully arrived with the papers, she would pore over them carefully, searching, okay, here it is, grabbing the little form and filling it out. Every year, the mighty bureaucratic dinosaur known as the New York City public school system, this is a metaphor here, you see that? Okay, I would label that, would belch forth a tiny diamond. They slipped a little notice to parents giving them the opportunity to have their kids bused to different school districts if they wanted, but there was a limited time to enroll, a short window of opportunity that lasted only a few days. Mommy stood poised over that option like a hawk. Ooh, simile. She invariably chose predominantly Jewish public schools. PS 138 in Rosedale, JHS 231 in Springfield Gardens, Benjamin Cardozo, Francis Lewis, Forest Hills, music and art. Okay. I made a little note there that she had them bused to private schools. Okay, remember she wants the best for them. Every morning we hit the door at 6:30, fanning out across the city like soldiers, armed with books, another simile here to label, T-squares, musical instruments, and S-bus pass that allowed you to ride the bus and subway for a nickel, and a free school lunch coupon in our pocket. Even the tiniest of us knew the subway and local bus schedules and routes by heart. The number 3 bus let you off at the corner, but the 3A turns, so you have to get off. By age 12, I was traveling an hour and a half one way to junior high school by myself. Wow, can you guys imagine that? Taking 2 buses each direction every day. My homeroom teacher, Miss Allison, a young white woman with glasses who generally ignored me, would shrug as I walked in 10 minutes late, apologizing about a delayed bus. The white kids stared at me in the cafeteria as I gobbled down the horrible school lunch. Who cared? It was all I had to eat. In this pre-busing era, my siblings and I were unlike most other kids in our neighborhood, traveling miles and miles to largely white Jewish communities to attend school while our friends walked to the neighborhood school. We grew accustomed to being the only black or Negro. Sorry guys, my hand's getting tired here. There we go. Whoop. In school, and were standout students, neat and well-mannered despite the racist attitudes of many of our teachers who were happy to knock our 95 test scores down to 85s and 80s over the most trivial mistakes. Being the token Negro was something I was never entirely comfortable with. I was the only black kid in my 5th grade class at PS 138 in the then all-white enclave of Rosedale, Queens. And one afternoon, as the teacher dutifully read aloud from our history books one page on Negro history, someone in the back of the class whispered, "James is a nigger," followed by a ripple of tittering and giggling across the room. The teacher shushed him and glared, but the damage, sorry, I wrote terrible because I thought this experience was terrible. How can people do that? But the damage had been done. I felt the blood rush to my face and sank low in my chair, seething inside, yet I did nothing. I imagined what my siblings would have done. They would have gone wild. They would have found that punk and bum rushed him. They never would have allowed anyone to call them a nigger. Hey, we got some good repetition here, don't we? Okay. That's part of his style, part of his syntax. But I was not them. I was shy and passive and quiet, and only later did the anger come bursting out of me, roaring out of me with such blast furnace force that I would wonder who that person was and where it all came from. Here's some good imagery here if you want to label that. Music. Let's circle this. I bet music is an outlet for James. Let's pay attention to that here. Music arrived in my life around that time, and books. I would disappear inside whole worlds comprised of Gulliver's Travels, that's a classic, Shane, and books by Beverly Cleary. I took piano and clarinet lessons in school, often squirreling myself away in some corner with my clarinet to practice, wandering away in Tchaikovsky or John Philip Sousa, trying to improvise like jazz saxophonist James Moody, only to blink back to reality an hour or two later. To further escape from painful reality, I created an imaginary world for myself. I believed my true self was a boy who lived in the mirror. I'd lock myself in the bathroom and spend long hours playing with him. He looked just like me. I'd stare at him, kiss him, make faces at him, and ordered him around. Unlike my siblings, he had no opinions. He would listen to me. If I'm here and you're me, how can you be there at the same time? I'd ask. He'd shrug and smile. I'd shout at him, abuse him verbally. Give me an answer! I'd snarl. I would turn to leave. But when I wheeled around, he was always there waiting for me. I had an ache inside, a longing, but I didn't know where it came from or why I had it. The boy in the mirror, he didn't seem to have an ache. He was free. He was never hungry. He had his own bed, probably, and his mother wasn't white. I hated him. Go away, I'd shout. Hurry up, get on out. But he'd never leave. My siblings would hold their ears to the bathroom door and laugh as I talked to myself. What a doofus you are, my brother Richie snickered. Even though my siblings called me Big Head because I had a big head and a skinny body to the outer world, I was probably on the most likely to succeed list. I was a smart kid. I read a lot, I played music well, and I went to church. This is some syntax here, folks, if you want to label that. Parallelism, okay? I read, I played, okay? How we talked about parallel verbs. I went to church. I had what black folks called good hair because it was curly as opposed to nappy. I was light-skinned or brown-skinned, and girls thought I was cute despite my shyness. Yet I myself had no idea who I was. I loved my mother, yet looked nothing like her. Neither did I look like the role models in my life. My stepfather, my godparents, other relatives, of whom were black, and they looked nothing like the other heroes I saw, the guys in the movies, white men like Steve McQueen and Paul Newman, who beat the bad guys and in the end got the pretty girl, who incidentally was always white. That's true. Think about the movies and cartoons back in the 60s. Barely any African American actors or actresses. One afternoon, I came home from school and cornered Mommy while she was cooking dinner. Ma, what's a tragic mulatto? I asked. Anger flashed across her face like lightning, and her nose, which tends to redden and swell in anger, blew up like a balloon. Wow, look at all those similes there. I would label that. Where did you hear that? She asked. I read it in a book. For God's sake, you're no tragic What book is this? Just a book I read. Don't read that book anymore. She sucked her teeth. Tragic mulatto. What a stupid thing to call somebody. Somebody called you that? No. Don't ever use that term. Am I black? or white? You're a human being, she snapped. Educate yourself, or you'll be a nobody. Will I be a black nobody or just a nobody? If you're a nobody, she said dryly, it doesn't matter what color you are. That doesn't make sense, I said. She sighed and sat down. I bet you never heard the joke about the teacher and the beans, she said. I shook my head. The teacher says to the class, tell us about different kinds of beans. The first little boy says, there's pinto beans. Correct, says the teacher. Another boy raised his hand. There's lima beans. Very good, says the teacher. Then a little girl in the back raises her hands and says, we're all human beings. She laughed. That's what you are, a human being. And a fart buster to boot. She got up and went back to cooking while I wandered away bewildered. Okay, folks, we're going to pause there for today. Definitely star this page. I think this is really important in the theme of identity and his understanding of his mother and their relationship and their bond here. Look up on your vocab sheet that I gave you. I'd also like you to still work on your vocabulary. Look up what mulatto is, and you'll see what that means in context of this part of the memoir if you've never heard of what mulatto is. Okay, so look up that term. So let's see here. You've got about about 7 or 8 pages to finish on your own for the week. Okay, so keep up with that. Keep up with the annotating. And I'm going to come back to you here. Kind of a little blurry, but there we go. Okay, so work on chapter 10 there on your own. Okay, finish that. And that'll be your, if you look on the schedule for tomorrow, I'm giving you time to finish reading chapter 10 using diddles. Make sure you annotate using your bookmark, and then you're going to have a threaded discussion assignment on Google Classroom. Okay, and I will hopefully be back in Tuesday to check on you with that. But again, finish chapter 10, finish annotating, and respond to the threaded discussion question on Google Classroom. Email me if you need help. All right, have a great day.